Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day. And I hope everyone's been having a great week out there so far. We do have a lot of information to cover in this morning's video as things are about to get pretty active out there in the weather world. As you can tell, there's a lot of tabs pulled up on your screen, but I do think we'll be able to work our way through this video pretty efficiently. So the first thing we'll discuss is the latest from the Storm Prediction Center. So we'll talk on severe weather first, and we will speak on tomorrow's severe weather event. We'll get more detailed on that, obviously, because it's closer to us. And then we'll speak on the pattern just going forward after that does support severe weather pretty much between now and through the weekend, maybe getting all the way into early next week. So we'll, nerd out with you guys, discuss all the ingredients that support severe weather, the pattern itself, things like that. And then we'll switch gears and speak on the flooding risk. We'll speak on the fire danger, and then we'll talk on a winter weather event across the Rockies. And I know I have not showed you guys a lot of love lately, but it'll be a segment for you folks that tune in that are loyal to my channel, even though I don't show you guys the attention you deserve. It's just hard to cover everybody in great detail sometimes, guys. These videos already are very long, as you know, and they would go on for hours on end if I was to get detailed about each and every section of the country like I would love to do. But I will have a segment for this winter storm on the way, and this could be interesting just because, areas like Denver, the Front Range, could go from like the 70s to a snowstorm and then back to the 70s in like a several day span. So, the weather certainly can get pretty wild across the Front Range and the high plains. So we'll do that. And then we'll round off the video, of course, by speaking on today's weather. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I could pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So latest for tomorrow's outlook. This is for tomorrow. We do have a slight risk. There has been no upgrade to an enhanced risk. So if you live in this yellow area, it's a level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather, a slight. The dark green is a level 1 out of 5, a marginal risk. The slight risk does include, Grand Island, Lincoln, Omaha, Nebraska, down to St. Joseph. Includes many counties, all the counties in far northern Missouri. Gets into like Burlington, Davenport, includes Des Moines, the heart of Iowa, Fort Dodge, Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, up to Mason City, all the way up to Rochester now, Minnesota, and just some southern counties in Minnesota. So level 2 out of 5 risk, marginal risk extends around it, down to Kansas City, all the way up to Minneapolis, all the way back over to Rockford to the east, and to the west, all the way back to North Platte. So what's driving this tornado risk? Right now, just a 2% risk in this green area of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. So tornado risk not very high. The wind threat, not very high either, just a 5% risk of damaging winds. But the hail threat, and I know I mentioned this yesterday, I thought this would be really hail-driven, and it is. If you live in this yellow area, that is a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But if you live in this black outlined area, okay, that is a 10% risk of significant hail, which the Storm Prediction Center considers 2 inch in diameter or larger. So we could have some supercells tomorrow that, won't have a lot of wind shear, a lot of kinematics, I would say, to really produce tornadoes, but they will have the thermodynamics to produce some very large hail. So we'll speak on this in a special segment here in a second, but this is the outlook for tomorrow. So we make our way into the next day, which is for, make sure I don't get my days mixed up. This is for Friday. Let's make sure I get this right. Yeah, this is for Friday. So we have a huge, slight risk as of now that stretches all the way up. I'm pretty much halfway up lower Michigan, all the way up both sides of the coastline of Lake Michigan, halfway up Chicago, Detroit, Toledo, Indianapolis, down to St. Louis, Springfield, Missouri, Fayetteville, Fort Smith, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, almost all the way down to San Angelo, Texas, included in this level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. This is a pretty large area. Marginal risk goes all the way up to sections of the UP of Michigan, all the way back through Cleveland, all the way down through northern sections of Kentucky. So, and all the way down to the Mexico-Texas border. So, this is a pretty large area of the country that runs a risk of severe weather. As of now, just a level 2 out of 5 risk. It's just kind of a sagging boundary is going to be heading through this area with a lot of wind flow over this region. But As of now, we just know that there is a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles of any given location. As of now, there's no hatched risk, just a 15% risk of any severe weather. So as we get into Saturday, we still have a slight risk. It's just long and kind of skinny. So, it stretches all the way from, central areas of PA, including like Southwest PA, Pittsburgh, Charleston, West Virginia, all of southern Ohio, southern sections of Indiana, including Evansville, a good chunk of Kentucky here, southern areas of Illinois, southeast Missouri, and then getting into these areas that seem to always get severe weather lately, right through Arkansas, including Pine Bluff, Little Rock, Fayetteville, Fort Smith, Jonesboro, through southeast Oklahoma, all the way down into the heart of Texas, including Austin, San Antonio, San Angelo, Abilene, Dallas-Fort Worth area. It does include a very small section of northwest Louisiana. And it's basically the same setup as you're getting for Friday. And this is for Saturday, except the flow begins to shift a little bit south as that boundary sags a little bit further south. And then we look at day 5, and this is for Sunday. Sunday could be a bigger deal, bigger day. We got a slight risk, though, that extends from St. Louis to the north all the way down to Beaumont to the south, almost down to the northern suburbs of Houston. Includes eastern Texas, the northern half of Louisiana, almost all of Arkansas except the far northwestern portion of the state. Sections of Mississippi, Vicksburg, all the way up the Mississippi Delta region, the Memphis, Jackson, Tennessee, western areas of Kentucky, and then a section of southern Illinois. This could be a bigger day where the setup kind of changes. We could have an injection of energy across the middle of the country, which could enhance ingredients more. It could bring higher in ingredients for severe weather into the picture. So that's the severe weather outlook. At day 6, there's nothing right now. Predictability too low, but we could have severe weather into Monday also. I do want to have a little segment for tomorrow's severe weather threat. We're not going to stay on this super long, but as we get into tomorrow morning's video, I will section out each state for tomorrow's. Well, yeah, we will be able to say today's severe weather event as we get into tomorrow morning. But starting off around midday tomorrow, not a whole lot going on. And then we get into tomorrow afternoon. You see the supercell fire up, right around or just outside of Fort Dodge. Of course, we don't know if this is exactly what's going to happen. What's interesting to me is we get into tomorrow afternoon, we have very strong to severe storms in the southern counties of Minnesota. And when I tell you these storms could produce very large hail, I'm telling you guys, there's a lot of cold air aloft around. Lapse rates will support that. The difference in temperatures from the surface to the upper levels of the atmosphere will, aid in a big spike in storm energy. So, these might be elevated, but they could be big hail producers. And, we get into later portion of the afternoon, very strong to severe storms up here in southeast areas of Minnesota. Even some strong storms trying to creep into western Wisconsin, but look how strong these storms look here in the northern counties of Iowa. And then we have to watch for some tornado-producing supercells down here in eastern Nebraska. Watch out, obviously, Lincoln, Omaha, any communities in western Nebraska. These storms could be all the way as far south as St. Louis, too. But you see these little circular things coming off these cells? These are certainly where we could get a quick spin up. You see it up here, too, in northeastern Iowa. But, these could produce very large hail. This is kind of a setup where, you could be under a slight risk, but you might not get a drop of rain. That's just kind of how this is, especially for the southwestern portions of this severe weather setup. But we got a few cells that could produce just all hazards, especially that large hail and a quick spin up. And then by the time we get late in the evening, the rest of the energy will make its way across Iowa into Wisconsin in the form of just some heavy rain. But we'll zoom into these areas a little bit more as we're waking up tomorrow morning and doing a video. But right now, it doesn't show super widespread coverage in this slight area, but the ingredients will be there for some strong and severe storms. Now, moving past tomorrow, getting into Friday, we're waking up to kind of a surface feature, surface low going across the Midwest. This could continue to bring some energy across the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region, some showers and storms as far north as, Michigan and Wisconsin. Now, another short wave or piece of energy will fire off this trough digging down across the middle of the country. And sure enough, this will get enough lifting mechanism. And, of course, with a lot of surface moisture around, which we'll talk about all that here in a second. This is again in the Friday evening. All this is going to show because, once again, I say this in almost every video discussing severe weather. We're just not in range of short-range model guidance, so we can't really show the true structure or maybe what these storms will take on. But You see blobs of green and yellow and orange and red right in here. This indicates some strong to severe thunderstorm activity. Now, some of this energy up here, like in Michigan, because remember, we do have a risk of severe weather all the way up into here Friday, is really driven off this low. The energy we're seeing right into here could be driven off some sort of energy right into here. But kind of could be like a bimodal setup, meaning kind of two different areas to really section off to really watch out for. So hope that makes sense. But you continue, and these storms will, continue overnight. I mean, it's the middle of the night, Friday night and Saturday morning. We got just kind of a train of storms going right through that slight risk area that the Storm Prediction Center mentions, right through the southern plains, up through areas of the Midwest, getting into the Great Lakes region. Just a lot of storm activity. Okay, and then we start to get into Saturday morning. This introduces the next severe weather day, and sure enough, we're going to do it again. This is Saturday afternoon, and we kind of have storms firing up in some of the same similar areas, maybe just a little bit further to the south, but similar setup. And then we could have some stronger to severe storms, maybe down in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. But then we get into Sunday, and this is when model guidance is a little bit more tricky. There's a difference between some of the global models with each other, and we could have just a full all-out ejection of some sort of low, of some sort of low pressure as the trough fully ejects. And here it is, 992 low, and this is Sunday afternoon, kind of fully ejecting across the plains. And the setup could change. This could bring more of a dynamic setup, higher end severe weather, and we just have to watch this entire region, I would say, right through here for strong to severe storms. I could see Sunday being a much higher tornado threat out of all the days. So this is something I'm watching. I've been mentioning, I think Sunday is the biggest day to watch. Maybe not, the corridor of severe weather might not be as large compared to Saturday and Sunday, compared to Friday and Saturday, but Sunday could be a big day across the larger circle I just drew. It's just trying to figure out how strong will this low pressure be that ejects off the base of this trough, and where will it go? I mean, will it kind of go like this? Will it kind of do what it's showing here on the Euro? Or will it go, more so like this? We just kind of have to figure that out, and we will over the next 48 hours especially. So, but, after we get past Sunday, there's no outlooks issued, but I would certainly watch out for some strong to severe storms around the deep south and the Gulf Coast line. But it does look like we kind of enter maybe a quiet couple of days after that, and then it could potentially get active once again in the middle of next week. And I think we'll round the April off pretty active. But as far as these ingredients, the first thing you kind of look at, and you can look at, the winds first, but we'll look at low-level moisture. Remember, dew points in the 50s to 60s, it's starting to get a little bit more moist in the air, especially in the 60s and 70s. Walk outside, and dew points are in the 60s, which is what you're looking at here. You can walk outside and say, okay, it's definitely a little bit more moist outside. You walk outside, and it's like dew points in the 70s. Then you're like, man, this is muggy. This is awful. I hate it. I know for me, that's how it is here in the South for about 5 to 6 months out the year. So it seems like, at least. But moving forward here, as we're waking up Friday, we've already talked about, Thursday. There's already moist air building out of the Gulf. Okay, we got kind of a tandem and flow, meaning we have a trough digging down out west that's bringing the flow out the southwest, and then we have a kind of a ridge, a mid-level ridge hanging out over areas of the deep south and the northern Gulf here, and this is pumping in a flow from the south right through this area. So both of these kind of flowing features are kind of working in tandem here, and this is helping to bring the return of moist air right up that area that has a 15% risk, a slight risk of severe weather. So you got dew points, a lot of moist air. These strong to severe storms love this, all the way up into Chicago, Michigan, Wisconsin, just a pool of pretty rich tropical moisture. Nothing too crazy like dew points widespread in the 70s, but this will definitely get the job done. And then, we get into Saturday, and a little bit more of a tight boundary sets up. So we get a more tight boundary of where we have dry, stable air, and then moist, maybe more so unstable air. And this sets up, wherever it sets up around it and just south, could certainly have the highest risk of severe weather, because that's where you'll have the best flow, because that's where your boundary is, which is normally where your highest level of flow kind of goes across. But huge sector of moist air. In fact, we got dew points in the 60s Saturday afternoon all the way into areas of the mid-Atlantic and like New York State. And then we start to get into Sunday. It kind of shifts, just the orientation. You can tell there's some sort of surface low right in here, kind of yanking back north this area of moist air all the way back into Illinois. And then we could get a cold front that kind of stabilizes the atmosphere for a couple of days across areas, but it doesn't look like it fully clears the deep south states. And then by the time we get into next Tuesday, the moist air is building right back up the plains into the Midwest and the deep south again. And I think that this will introduce kind of period number 2 that we need to watch for late next week. So around this time next week. So, but you got the moist air that'll be there. In response to the moist air, you got higher levels of CAPE, storm fuel. So this is Friday afternoon. CAPE value spiking well over 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram all the way up to Chicago. All the way up to almost Milwaukee. So plenty of storm fuel, storm CAPE in the atmosphere to get these storms going. And then we start to get into Saturday. It's kind of more splotchy, but there'll be plenty of CAPE to get storms going for Saturday too. And then Sunday is a day to watch. I know it doesn't look, super impressive on the European model, but there will certainly be energy that's going to be modeled poorly in this area. We just got to figure out where that surface low is going to be. And then, like I said, cold front could dive down Monday into Tuesday of next week. And then by the time we're getting, even into Tuesday, energy is exploding across areas of the southern plains. So CAPE values well over 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram. And then we get into Wednesday, and we got a lot of fuel trying to build back up, but most of it is staying confined to the south. So, but still, severe weather could really get going again sometime next week. Next thing you look at is the flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is 18,000, 20,000 feet up in the air, and this is for Friday morning, and we start to get into Friday afternoon, which we have that huge slight risk. And the reason we do is, reason number 1 is all the moist air surging up into this area. In response, you have storm fuel, and then we have a lot of flow cruising over this area of the country, right in the middle of that slight risk. So I'm going to draw on this. So we got this trough sort of digging down. The flow around this trough goes like this. You can see the wind bar. See, this wind bar is kind of the flag portion of it is pointing this way. That means the flow is coming out of that direction. So it wraps around, and then you look at this wind bar, for example, and it's pointing that way. So that means that the flow is coming from that way. So flow is shooting across the middle of the country and overlapping that moist and unstable environment. So this pretty much brings us that forcing mechanism to get these storms going. Now, other little features you look at is the low-level jet. Are the winds screaming out the south, while the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere are screaming out the southwest? Yeah, potentially. You got to watch those surface features, but for now, it's just the basic ingredients, and I don't think there'll be any huge surface features out there for Friday and Saturday, but I do think there'll be just enough of turning with height as far as the wind flow in the atmosphere, directional shear, to have a bit of a tornado threat each and every day of these severe weather days, especially as we get into Sunday. But plenty of flow shooting over this area, and if you're wondering, Mitch, what are these areas in purple and even pink and red? This is just modeled flow in that 18, 20,000 feet up in the atmosphere kind of area. So 60, 70 knots, that's equivalent to 75, 85 miles per hour in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So winds are whipping through this area, and we keep going here. Might have to kind of reset it. Let's see. Yeah. So we keep going here, and we start to get into Saturday, and the orientation of this changes a little bit, but still flow kind of in general going over the same area. And then we get into Sunday, and it really begins to shift. So we have this kind of more concentrated area of flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere right over this region. It's stronger, so 80, 90, could be even stronger, maybe 100 knots. And then where's our low-level jet? If we have some sort of surface low right in here, we're going to have a low-level jet with winds probably screaming out the south. So I do think Sunday's a bigger day to watch. And then, what happens as we get into next week? Could have a lack of flow, but a lot of moisture to the south. So this will kind of help to keep too much widespread thunderstorm activity ongoing, but we would just watch late next week as the flow kind of begins to return. But model guidance is everywhere. It could be a thing where next week we have enough thermodynamic energy out there, but maybe not enough flow in the atmosphere to really get the storms going. But I think some things could change. But that's an update on the severe weather. I do want to mention flooding is going to return. So this is the outlook for, make sure I don't get my days mixed up, for Friday. So we have a slight risk stretching from Oklahoma City through Springfield, Joplin, Tulsa. 15% risk of flash flooding occurring within 25 miles in a given location. No moderate risk right now. And then for day 4, the area gets much larger. Doesn't go up a category, but it is a much larger area. And I have a feeling that, we'll end up going up to a moderate risk, which would be a 40% risk of flash flooding. But right now, just a large area in the yellow from St. Louis down to the Dallas-Fort Worth area has a slight risk, 15% risk of flash flooding occurring. In day 5, we do have another area right in here, but not a super big concern. Rainfall between now and I believe this is between now and next Monday. Nothing crazy, but one thing you'll notice right off the dot is the Carolinas and Georgia and the Virginia, we look dry. And I live in central South Carolina, and I'm starting to wonder if we're going to be stuck in a pattern like this through late spring and summer. And if that does happen, we're going to have to deal with drought issues in the southeast. But I don't see any rain for a lot of areas in the southeast through early next week. So, but kind of the same areas that's been getting hit. I do think it shifts a little bit further to the west compared to what we saw a week and a half or so ago. But kind of right here where Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas, Oklahoma come together, this will be the heart of the worst of the rain. So it's just about 3 to 4 inches in this area. So not a ton, but some of this rain could fall pretty fast and furious. If we go through day 7, could bump up to 4. But a lot of the rain is concentrated in this same area through the southern plains up through the Midwest. This is where most of our action is going to be, because this is where most of our flow is going to be and our energy is going to be cruising across. Now, on the flip side, we got the dry weather and the fire danger. This is for today. We have a critical fire danger risk across areas of New Mexico and Arizona, and then elevated that extends up into Pueblo, I believe is the correct way to say it, but an elevated risk of fire all the way up into that region. But the main day that we need to be aware of is for tomorrow. We have an extremely critical risk of an extremely critical fire danger risk across areas of New Mexico, including Albuquerque, Santa Rosa, and these areas here in the pink. And then we have the critical risk that does extend all the way up into southeastern areas of Colorado, into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma. So fire is going to be a big risk anytime where you have energy shooting across this area. It typically remains dry in this region, unfortunately. It's just how it is. It's always been like that. So fire is going to be a big issue in this area. Now, on the winter weather side of things, as energy is kind of dropping down into the Rockies, we have winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories currently up. Winter weather advisories are in the purple, winter storm warnings are in the pink, and we have some lingering winter storm watches here near the Laramie Range and down here in southern areas of Wyoming. So really what we're watching for is just a lot of energy dropping down out of Canada into the Rockies. So we'll start off with this evening. The blue is snow, the green is rain, and we'll just have a lot of heavy snow that we're waking up to, especially tomorrow morning across southern areas of Montana, getting into the higher elevations of Wyoming, some snow back into Idaho too. But as we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, I think that most of Wyoming is experiencing a snowstorm, some snow in the higher elevations of Utah too. But there's a lot of cold air dropping down, at least for a temporary period of time, not very long. But as we're getting into tomorrow night, into Friday morning, we could have a dramatic shift in weather across the Front Range. We're actually going to be waking up to some snow in the Denver metro area, snowing up in, Casper, Laramie, And many areas of Wyoming will experience accumulating snow. Even a little bit of snow is possible in western areas of Nebraska and southwest South Dakota also. And we continue, and it looks like a quick hitting snowstorm across Denver and the Front Range, and of course the actual Rockies of Colorado. Might even get a little bit of a wintry mix in like Salt Lake City, and then the energy drops all the way down into New Mexico. So we're getting into Saturday morning, and we could have some heavy snow in the higher elevations of northern New Mexico, southern Colorado also. And finally, the energy fully ejects across the middle of the country, which could bring that heightened severe weather day Sunday across the areas of the country. So snowfall between now, and this is just between 6 p.m. Friday, which should cover the duration of the event. And the Helena could actually get 3 inches or less of snow. Billings 2 to 4. But higher elevations like down into the Bighorn Mountains and just the higher elevations of the northern Rockies of Montana. And then we drop it down to Wyoming, like the Yellowstone National Park area. But Riverton could get 6 to 8 inches of snow. Lander 12 to 18. Mammoth 2 to 3. Cody 2 to 3. Bighorn Mountains could get over 1.5 feet of snow. Casper could get 6 to 8 inches of snow. And then we drop it a little bit further south into Wyoming. This is between now and 6 p.m. Friday. This was updated a few hours ago. Cheyenne, 2 to 5 inches of snow. Laramie, 3 to 7. Wheatland, 2 to 5. Elk Mountain, 4 to 8. So a lot of snow. Late season snowstorm for sure is going to impact you guys. And then we'll cover one more area, and that is Colorado, areas of Colorado, at least between now and 6 p.m. Friday. Could be snowing still in some of these areas, especially the southern sections of the state. But just between now and 6 p.m. Friday, 3 inches or less in Denver, but you get a little bit closer to the foothills. Boulder 3 to 6, Evergreen 4 to 7. Elevation will play a big part in this. Fort Collins 2 to 4. We gotta definitely pay attention to you folks out here. Dimitri lives out here in the Denver area, and he hit me up yesterday through Messenger on Facebook. And I appreciate the excellent breakdown. I appreciate you telling me about this system because. Let's not be honest. Will be completely honest with you guys. When you're trying to cover the entire lower 48, you forget about little things like this. And I saw this winter storm coming, but I didn't know how dramatic it was going to be for some of the areas along the Front Range. Like if you look at get on Weather Channel app and look at Denver 10-day forecast, and you'll see that it's going to be nice today, and then over the next couple of days, it's going to drop into the 30s. A quick hitting snowstorm will happen, and it's going to warm right back up into the 60s and 70s. And this isn't uncommon out here. It happens a couple times a year at least. So just very dynamic weather. I always laugh at people who always say, because I promise you guys, everybody says it for their own state. And that is that if you don't like the weather, just wait a day or something and it'll be totally different. Everybody says some sort of similar phrase like that for everywhere they live. I know they do in my state in South Carolina. But it truly is like that in the middle of the country, in the plains, along the Front Range. You get these cold fronts, some people call them blue northerns, where, it's literally in the mid-80s one day, and the next day you're getting a blizzard. So it truly is like that out west. Just wild west, right? But weather today, this is what we're looking at. We still have this wraparound flow that's impacting areas of the Northeast, bringing some rain, bringing some snow for you folks. Not a huge deal. Middle of the country is very quiet. Southeast is quiet. Most of the country is pretty darn quiet this morning. So watches, warnings, and advisories. Still some lingering winter weather advisories across areas of the Tuck Hill Plateau. There's all those winter weather alerts across the northern Rockies, central Rockies. Red flag warnings in the pink where we mentioned the fire danger. There's that. Storm Prediction Center. Now, there is a risk of severe weather across the middle of the country today. So it's quiet this morning, but we could have an impulse of energy that shoots through, could bring some severe weather across areas of the Central Plains. And right now, this less than a 2% risk of a tornado. And then the hail and wind threat are at 5%. So not a big threat. Risk of flash flooding is below 5%. So nothing to really speak on with that. And then we'll speak on the Southeast first. Beautiful day. After a very warm day Monday, and a cold front sweeping through yesterday, we are having a cooler day, probably the coolest day of the week for certain areas across the Southeast. For some areas, yesterday was, but ridge is already quickly starting to move in place, but it'll be more of a spring-like day today. It's a cooler start, but not a whole lot of weather to speak on. that impulsive energy that's bringing that marginal risk across the Central Plains will actually throw some rain and make it all the way into like Middle Tennessee, Kentucky by the time we get into tomorrow morning. Bring a little bit of rain, not a big deal. We'll continue to get this wraparound flow across areas of the interior New England region. This will continue to bring some snow across Vermont, New Hampshire, northern New York. A little bit of a rain-snow mix up here in Maine also, but by the time we get into this evening, into tomorrow morning, things should be a little bit more calm, but we can continue to deal with it a little bit as we get into tomorrow morning. But Tug Hill Plateau could get another, couple inches of snow. There's the key down here. Same thing south of Buffalo and the Jamestown. A few inches of snow in the Adirondacks, and higher elevations of Vermont and New Hampshire could get a few to several inches of snow depending on what your elevation is. The Southern Plains, just watch out for that fire danger across New Mexico, Arizona. But we could actually get a pop-up storm down here in southwest Texas, but just it doesn't look like much. But watch out in Kansas today. You see this splotches of green and yellow, orange, etc. These could, hit severe limits. It doesn't look too scary right now, like on the HRR model here, but definitely watch out if you live in portions of Kansas. We could get some storms later this evening into the overnight hours that could make their way through. Some gusty winds, some hail is possible. North Central U.S., quiet morning. We get into this afternoon, this evening, the overnight hours, all the way into tomorrow morning, and it's pretty quiet. Could have some heavy downpours for your Thursday morning across areas of Illinois, as you can tell down here, but not a big deal at all. And then the western U.S., we've already talked about the energy just dropping down to Montana today, but we're going to get some snow in northern Montana, then central Montana. By the time we get into the overnight hours tonight and tomorrow morning, some heavy snow will begin to fall in the southern counties of Montana, and eventually tomorrow morning getting into Wyoming and areas of Idaho. So that's the only weather, and we've already had a segment for that. But temperatures in the eastern U.S., there will be a boundary in place. It's going to remain cold across the northeast. Some areas won't get above freezing. But once you get into the mid-Atlantic point south, warms into the 60s, 70s, even some 80s in Florida. Kind of a northwest to southeast flow across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. So cooler temperatures, but not too bad for you guys as standards this time of the year. 40s and 50s across areas of the Great Lakes region. But middle of the country continues to be very warm, 70s, 80s. A warm day in Denver, but you do got a quick hitting snowstorm on the way. And you can actually see, I'm going to get this in motion for you folks. Watch how the temperatures drop over the next 48 hours across areas of the Rockies. Look up in Montana. Now we get into tomorrow. Look how the temperatures rise, but look how the cold front is surging through right into here. So pretty interesting stuff. And then the cold front really drops down all the way into the Rockies for tomorrow especially. So, and then look how cold it is in Wyoming, Montana, in the middle of the night tomorrow night. I mean, that's some cold temperatures. So that's all I got, guys. No Bible devotion this morning for you folks. Just want to get some good scripture together and don't want to get too repetitive with some of the same things. But I always want to make sure I'm speaking from the heart and don't want to force it, if that makes any sense. So God bless all y'all. We'll have another one tomorrow morning, and really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna do a little live video, or either I might just do like a regular video, just kind of updating you guys on some things. I haven't done that in a while for you folks, but I will be doing that probably sometime today or tomorrow or sometime this week. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. But God bless all y'all. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you tuning in for the people who continue to. And hope you guys have a wonderful day.